He mishandles. He's going to have to put the three up for the win. Oh, wins it off the glass. Davo breaks the hearts of New Zealand again. The mishandle. Has a look at the clock. Checks it. Off the window. For the win.
The year of Davo Hickey continues from winning a title with the Illawarra Hawks to now hitting buzzer beaters for the Boomers. This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour. Kane Pittman here in the US, Olgun in the Sydney studio. We're going to break down what we did see in that Australia-New Zealand 2-game set. The NBL is about to get going again, so we're going to break down perhaps some storylines to track in the back end. And we have a new segment, the StatMate Streak Watch, Olgun, and you've got some numbers that, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix fans would be very, very interested in. But firstly, it is very nice to see you in the sharp studio. You don't have the tinny audio that you do when you're at home. It's great to see you, my friend.
Wow, man, we're about a minute in. I'm already receiving this. No, it's good to be here. And it's good to have FIBA basketball, but like meaningful FIBA basketball. I appreciate that Australia has to play games against some of these Asian countries and these other Oceania countries, but Australia versus New Zealand in meaningful games, that's what I'm here for. If we're going to have a FIBA break and stop the NBL season for 2 weeks, this is the kind of basketball I want to watch.
No, I totally agree. And I had to attack you. You said that I was potentially crazy last week, or maybe you said I wasn't crazy. But anyway, I felt like you took a shot at me. So now I've got one back at you, and we continue on the road. So let's talk about this Boomers New Zealand double Friday night in Hobart, Monday night in Wellington. Yes, I understand that Davo Hickey shot that we just heard at the end, many didn't see. I don't know what happened. It is not anything to do with us, Olgun. I was trying to watch the game as well, so it was highly disappointing. But in the end, the Boomers win this game by 2 points. They win the 2 games by a total of 7 points. We asked the question last week, how concerned were you? This was some seriously scrappy basketball, but if you're Australia, you take the 2 wins and you just move on to the next window.
Look, like I said, these are meaningful games, so you have to win these games. I don't think Australia played particularly well in either of these games. I think there's a good argument that New Zealand was the better team in both games, that they just didn't have the talent and the ball carrying to get them over the line. That was like the key issue for this New Zealand team. I thought their bigs were awesome. I thought Sam Mennenga, who we're going to talk about in a bit, was amazing. I thought Tyrell Harrison was great. I think their bigs did a great job. It was just the inconsistency of the ball carrying on that New Zealand team that didn't allow them to really be consistent and get them over the line. And then for Australia, it was a bit choppy at times, but Jaylin Galloway, I think that his second game was understated because of how well Australia's bigs played and because of the Davo Hickey bucket. But Jaylin Galloway continues just to be an awesome FIBA player, and we're just waiting, Kane, for this to translate over to the NBL and potentially further. But look, 2-0 in the first stretch of 2027 World Cup Asian qualifiers. This was a good outcome for Australia, but I know Dean Vickerman's probably looking back at these and thinking, all right, there's a lot of stuff we have to work on.
Well, Dean had every reason to feel very stressed. So the Boomers are down by 10 points. There's around 8.5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter in this second game. And I know Davo Hickey hits the game winner. I know you mentioned some of the players there that were important along the way. But let me ask you the question. Who won this game for Australia in that 8.5-minute stretch?
That 8.5-minute stretch, look, there were Nick Kay minutes.
There we go.
I thought were.
You hit it.
Did I get it?
That's
right
the correct
away?
answer. It was Nick Kay, and I know that this guy is the most maligned player in the Boomers, particularly when he's played big minutes in those big-time tournaments. But sometimes you just got to tip your hat, Olgun. And in that final 8.5 minutes, he had 10 points, 1 steal, 1 assist as well. And immediately after that timeout, when they were down 10, he went crazy. They had some good contributors, but hey, they had to lean on the veteran and Nick Kay. I applaud you. You got the job done in the fourth quarter.
Look, Nick Kay, there are O-board putbacks. Obviously, the thing that will never stand out with Nick Kay is what he does defensively, because he's not a sexy defender. He's not going to block shots, but he's always in the right position. And I think that's the most understated thing about what Nick Kay has been over his entire tenure as a Boomer. So between him and I think there was a Jaylin Galloway 3 coming off a curl that I think got this game to within 1 or 2 points. I thought that was a huge shot. Galloway's just made this tendency of hitting timely threes, especially in the FIBA environment, and he did it in this game. But I agree with you. Nick Kay, Keanu Pinder came up huge in this game. When everything got a little bit sticky for Australia, Keanu Pinder, he showed off like a skill set that I don't think we've seen before, which is a lot of stuff off the dribble. He's leaning into the 3-ball more and more. So he's gone to Japan, got a ton of confidence, come back here, and it's almost looking like a wing player out there. That's like how he wanted to play. But I agree with you, Nick K. Again, there's a steadier out there, and it's always Nick K. No matter what level he plays at, no matter if it's a major tournament or a World Cup qualifier like this, Nick K is the guy who steadies the ship here. I agree with you.
Yeah, 20 points he had in this game. He was really, really important. And I understand there will be people listening to this podcast or watching us on YouTube going, I don't want to hear about Nick K. Stop talking about that guy. I don't want him in the Boomers. But he's been important in the past. He helped them win that game. Obviously, Davo goes and hits the final 3 because Hickey overall had 8 turnovers in this game, did not shoot the ball well. I wouldn't say it was a great Davo game, but in the end, he comes up and hits the clutch shot there. And one other guy I just want to, applaud for what he's been through over the course of his career. Angus Glover in game 1 was awesome in Tassie. He's a great story. You even tweeted, and potentially he could be a guy that, could be on the periphery. They could consider him for his shooting, for his microwave scoring ability. We'll see. I think that's a long, long way away. He's certainly cooled off in game 2, didn't hit a 3 from the outside, but Angus Glover, an easy guy to support. Now, you mentioned Sam Mennenga, Olgun. And before we talk about this, man, let's look at what was easily the highlight for New Zealand in this game 2.
Sees the double. Mennenga. Oh, with the right hand. Oh, Jack White. Oh, my goodness. But the Tall Blacks didn't attack. Take another look at Sam Mennenga. Say hello. They were sharing a smile earlier. Let him know about it. The unfake. The lefty.
So Sam Mennenga puts Jack White on the poster. One of the posters, the best posters you'll see all year in the NBL, let alone in this FIBA window as well. All Jack White could do was smile. This was part of another hot stretch for Sam. And I do want to hat tip our guys, Andrew Mulligan and Casey Frank on the call. Now, Mulls, bad luck, mate. Take those 2 L's with you and stay over there in New Zealand. But it was nice to hear you on the call. But Sam Mennenga, Olgun, I said he was my breakout guy at the start of this NBL season. He is quietly putting together a season. And let me just ask you straight up. Do you think that this guy is heading towards All-NBL honors with what you're seeing?
All-NBL is very tough because not only are there a lot of good players in front of him, there are a lot of good bigs that I think are ahead of him. But he's slowly working his way to a point where if you look at his numbers, if you look at how good the Breakers are when he's on the floor, they're effectively a winning team when he's on the floor. It's what happens when he goes to the bench where the Breakers sort of falter a little bit. So that has to be noted. But look, he's working his way into that point. He's working his way to potentially a Next Gen award, a Most Improved Player award, potentially an All-NBL season, and then he's also a free agent after this season. So you have to think that a lot of these teams that are going to need bigs, and there are a lot of them, especially in big markets, they're going to look at him and think, man, this skill set, the back to the basket game has improved. The shooting is looking a bit more real. Obviously, we know that the sort of the physical specimen that he is too. So he ticks a lot of boxes of a local big who can come in and make a really big impact. He's going to get paid this offseason. And that dunk, that had all the makings of a perfect bit of theater because it was an awesome dunk. It was then the stare down that was obnoxious, but not too obnoxious. And then it was Jack White staring back at him, not reacting, not being too insecure that I got dunked on. No, Jack White is going to contest your shot. That's why we love Jack White. But he stared back at him, and then both of them went their separate ways. This was the perfect poster dunk because it had every bit of drama that we want from this. This was awesome theater from Sam Mennenga, from Jack White. I love this play so much from start to finish. And a minute before this, those two were sort of chit-chatting to each other. They were smiling with each other. So these guys are friends. These guys know each other. So that's why there's an extra bit of mayo on this dunk that I really loved.
Yeah, 35 points combined for Mennenga across these 2 games, 16 rebounds as well. So it's a point a minute for New Zealand. I would ask the question, why did this man only play 14, 15 minutes in game 2? They were winning his minutes. You could have found a little bit more time for him. Before we move on, let me ask you this question. So you talk about All-NBL, and I know that New Zealand's off the radar a little bit, so there might be some people listening going, come on, Kane, what are you on about when you think about the resurgence of the big man in the NBL? So if I just ask you, whether Sam Mennenga has had a better season than JaVale McGee, what do you say?
I say no, but with a caveat. Obviously, at this point in time, the New Zealand Breakers have a better record. They have a substantially better defense. And them having a top 4 defense is the thing that makes me feel like they're redeemable. When we're thinking about who's going to creep into that 5 or 6 play-in spot, New Zealand's defense is a big reason for that. I think Mennenga is a big reason for their defense too. It's a tough question because JaVale McGee's production is off the charts, but I don't think he's an effective defender in the NBL. Whereas I think Sam Mennenga is effective on both ends. So look, I'm not gonna be a big hero and say that JaVale McGee is better than Sam Mennenga. That Sam Mennenga is better than JaVale McGee, but there is a good argument that if I was building a team right now, I might want Sam Mennenga over JaVale McGee because of the two-way skill set and because of how not exploitable he is defensively.
I thought I was going to get a quicker answer than that, but I accept that and I like your reasoning. So what about JLA real quick? Yes or no?
See, I'm gonna be real annoying, Kane. It's like, who's around him? Who else is on the team?
No, but I'm not asking you that.
You have JLA, he's like a target.
But that's not the question. I'm just asking because if you're an All-NBL voter right now, are you voting for JaVale McGee, JLA, Tyrell Harrison, Josh Bannon, Doolittle, Humphreys, or Edwards? Because these are the guys that he is going up against, and probably 4 or 5 of them will get All-NBL.
If I'm an All-NBL voter, I would have Mennenga over McGee. I would have JLA over Mennenga. I'd have Humphreys probably at the same level as JLA. Again, as much as a lot of people don't, I value winning. If you are helping your team win games, then I put a lot of stock into that. So Humphreys and JLA are toward the top of this. JaVale is a little bit lower because unfortunately his team isn't winning games.
All right. So he's in the mix. That's my whole point. I think he's been outstanding.
I agree he's in the mix.
Yeah, he's only 23 years of age. New Zealand potentially could make a run. I think they've been getting better on the road to the FIBA break. Wouldn't have lost any confidence playing in these 2 games. 2 losses, though. We have to continue to remind people Australia 2-0 in a World Cup qualifying. Now, it does bring us to a segment that we enjoy. It's called Sound Off, Olgun. And me and you had some discussions around this. And I think it would be fair to say that out of us two, I'm probably more likely to just say something ridiculous and get overly animated and get highly excitable about something that you will just bring me back to earth. Like last week when I said I would, did I say I would pick Adelaide over Melbourne? Anyway, there was a few things last week talking about DJ Vasiljevic as well. And you were like, look, I hear what you're saying. This is what I think. So that's the way we're going to do it now. I'm going to throw some statements out there. You're going to respond to that. And you mentioned the man, Jaylin Galloway. It had me thinking after watching him at the Asia Cup, a guy that's already been in the NBA system before, and then watching him in these 2-game windows. And let me tell you some numbers here. So he top scored in game 1 with 19 points. The Boomers were plus 15 when he was on the floor. In the second game, he scored 13 points, 5 of 7 from the floor. The Boomers were plus 14 when he's on the floor. Now, plus minus isn't an individual stat, but when Jaylin Galloway was on the floor across these 2 games, in 63 minutes, the Boomers were plus 29, which by my count means that they were minus 34 in the 17 minutes he was on the bench. Jaylin Galloway is a winning player. He is 6'6". He's got incredible size. You already said it. He is shooting the ball at an incredibly high level in the NBL, but also when he plays for the green and gold. He's only 22. He turns 23 in a couple of weeks' time in December. And as I was watching this Boomers team, he was the one guy that I was watching on the floor saying, this guy is an NBA player. Jaylin Galloway fits in the NBA with his size, with his length, his NBA athleticism, which is always the question when guys go from the NBL to the NBA. Will they stand up? I think he absolutely does. And there are better players in the NBL right now, no question, including his teammate, Kendrick Davis, who is a significantly better NBL player right now. But if we're just talking NBA fit, Jaylin Galloway, I see an NBA future for him. His teammates rave about him, and I think he's got everything in the skill set that NBA teams are looking for. How do you feel about that? Is that a hot take?
It's not a hot take. I don't disagree with you.
Damn it.
However,
here we go.
Yes, Jaylin Galloway, high-level athlete. He's demonstrating to be an improving shooter. Mm-hmm. That is great. Obviously, your point about him over Kendrick Davis. Kendrick Davis is a better player now, but when you think of who can plug and play into the NBA more effectively, it's obviously someone like Jaylin Galloway. The actual question then becomes, yes, he's 22, about to turn 23, elite athlete, good shooter. What is and I agree with you, right? But I'm going to play devil's advocate. What is the difference between Jaylin Galloway, this 6'6", 6'7" wing type guy who's a high-level athlete and an improving shooter? Do these sort of guys not grow on trees in America? What is the reason, and I'll turn this back on you, what is the reason why an NBA team should say, we're going to invest in this guy? Like, what is the point of difference that Jaylin Galloway has that, let's say, Joe Schmo, wing player, 6'6", out of Alabama, over here who's 19 years old. What doesn't that guy have that Jaylin Galloway has? That if I'm an NBA team, I'm the GM of a new NBA team. Why should I take Jaylin Galloway over this other guy?
Yeah, a few reasons. And it's a great question because that is ultimately what everyone is going to ask. And that's why I generally think when we look at guys in the NBL that are 26, 27, 28, I'm like, NBA teams are probably going to overlook you because they might not see that there is significant development still to come. But a few reasons. I do think that the NBL has respect from NBA teams. So if teams are playing in winning environments in the NBL and not necessarily being a superstar, I think NBA teams look at guys that play a role and that playing winning basketball in a winning environment and a winning program. I think that helps. But then I also think that it helps that when you watch those games at the Asia Cup, he looked like a guy. Because if you're saying, okay, we've got a role player that has the size for the NBA, you don't want this to be a ceiling. Like, you want to look at Jaylin Galloway and say, we believe that if we get you in our program, you will get significantly better over the next 4 or 5 years. Plus, you're going to be a bargain for us because we're going to sign you to whether it's a two-way or a really low money deal for the NBA. So I think that he's proven that, yes, he can play winning basketball and he doesn't need to have the ball in his hands. He can defend multiple positions. But then also he has come out and said, I can also be a guy that can get better and can take over when I need. Who knows if that's a role he's ever going to play in the NBA? Probably not. But I think those would be two reasons why.
And look, like I said from the top, I agree with you. I think he's an NBA talent. It's really just where is the opening? Where does he slot in? And the next step in my mind, yes, he's been with the Sydney Kings for like 7 seasons, right? It's a crazy amount of seasons for someone who's like 22. However, and he's won championships and he's played a key role in some of those championships too. A lot of people forget in that series against New Zealand, he was alongside Justin Simon, someone who was picking up full court, an elite defender, right? And so we know we can do that. I want to see the shooting that we've seen in the FIBA environment translate to the NBL environment. So then we can have more faith and more trust that will translate to the NBA environment. Once we see that, then I think surefire, there's no reason why you don't take this guy. He ticks all the boxes. Until we see the shooting translate a little bit more cleanly to the NBL, then I think there's still some questions. Once he does that, then if I'm a GM, I'm that GM, then I'm taking Jaylin Galloway.
I like it. One to track. Let us know what you think in the YouTube comments. Jaylin Galloway, do you see it? Even if you're a Sydney Kings hater, and we know there's plenty of those, guys and girls out there, but Jaylin Galloway is still someone we can enjoy when he plays for Australia and has been doing very nice work for the Boomers from the Asia Cup, also in this FIBA World Cup qualifying window. Back with the Kings this week, the NBL back on ESPN, of course. Now, Olgun, it brings us to a segment, and shout out to the sales team, to the marketing team, just putting in the work, putting in the hours. I've been begging. I said, come on, man, we need a sponsor for the Aussie Hoops Hour, and we do have a sponsor now. It is the StatMate Streak Watch, presented by PointsBet. And this is where two nerds like me or you get to dive into the stats and say, what is an advanced stat? What is an analytics perspective that we see that maybe doesn't stand out to everyone and we bring to the table? And don't forget, download StatMate now to play more or less, and you could win $1,000. And that sounds very, very nice to me. So download StatMate. Olgun, you're going to have the new ball for this first edition. Don't mess it up is what I'm saying to you right now. But what have you been looking at? And I hear Southeast Melbourne Phoenix potentially on the radar.
All right, 19%. Just keep that in mind.
Sounds low.
Josh King, head coach of the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, was once asked in a press conference, hey, when you look at a box score, what's the stat you look at? And he says, turnovers forced. And when you look at the way they play, you think, oh, obviously, right? They pick up full court. They're disruptive. They're energetic. They're handsy. John Brown, the second, guides what they do on that end of the floor, right? They force a lot of turnovers. But how many, right? And this is a stat I've brought up before, but I wanted to highlight it because I think it's so indicative of the way this team operates. And it's the reason why they're a top 3 defense right now and have been all season and will be for the rest of the season. It's because 19% of their opponent's possessions are turnovers. They have a 19% opponent turnover percentage. That is the extent to which this team picks up the floor consistently, has the depth to be able to cycle through guys so they can pick up the floor consistently, and have recruited to Josh King's style of play, which is a team that can play up and in and is handsy and can help and can overhelp to the point where they force turnovers and get runouts. It's why they have a really effective offense too, is because they're able to force turnovers and get easy buckets on the other end. So again, it's something I brought up before, but I wanted to highlight it. I figured, man, we have a sponsor now. We can bring up a stat. Let's highlight this stat. This is the best opponent turnover percentage that I've seen. I went through Spatial Jam. I clicked through every season, Kane. I couldn't find a turnover percentage in the NBL that was higher than 19%. Melbourne United is 15% right now, but in effect, 1 in 5 of the opponent possessions against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix result in a turnover. That is an unbelievable stat. It is a credit to Josh King. It is a credit to the way that he coaches and the team that he's recruited and the players on the floor and the activity they play with. 19%, Kane. It's crazy.
Yeah, 1 out of 5 possessions. I like it a lot. This is a team that is probably more annoying than any other in the league to play against. You pointed to it, Josh King has experience overseas, but he's also American. And this is one thing that you hear when you talk to people over here in the States that go to Australia. They say, man, the NBL, the defensive pressures, Southeast Melbourne have ramped it up even further. You got to suit your personnel. They got 5 guys averaging more than 1 steal a game. So I love that number. Talking a little bit of defense. And that's why, even if you think there's some offensive deficiencies, the Phoenix are winning a stack of games and they're still right there, with a chance to finish in the top 4. So that was very nice. That was the StatMate Streak Watch presented by PointsBet. Don't forget, download StatMate there. Now, also, always check out Olgun's work at espn.com.au. You dropped a story overnight there that people can check out with just a bunch of stuff that people are talking around the NBL as we get ready to go out of the FIBA break. And it did make me think, let's go one storyline each that we are tracking in the second half of the season. We'll start with you. What have you got? And I'm sure this is in the article. People, again, check out every storyline, but what's one?
This is in the story. This is the Brisbane Bullets.
Spoiler alert.
Look, right now, the Brisbane Bullets, 5-10, haven't looked amazing. Obviously dealt with a ton of injury issues, both with imports and local players. The injuries to Mitch Norton, Sam McDaniel were unbelievably hurtful to this team. Obviously, Casey Prather goes down with a season-ending injury. There were also some mishaps when it came to recruiting. So Jalen Adams is now out the door. Javon Freeman-Liberty, who was out the door before, is now back. But now it's like the hope is that now everything has settled. And we look at the roster. And if you just look at the roster, all else equal, you look at a potential starting lineup of Mitch Norton, Javon Freeman-Liberty, Sam McDaniel, Terry Taylor, new import coming in, who everyone around the league tells me is at the level. He's really, really good. And Tyrell Harrison. Now, that can be Sam McDaniel at the 3. It could be Alex Dukas at the 3 if you need more shooting there. Either way, one of those guys can come off the bench. Dakota Mathias, who I think has been a really good pickup for this team, comes off the bench too. Toy Smith-Milner will be back in this lineup. Tane Murray all of a sudden doesn't have to be the 3rd option on this team. He can go back to being the 8th or 9th guy on this team. And all of a sudden, you have a really impressive starting lineup that is as talented and balanced as any around the league. And so then the question then becomes, all right, does Stu Lash have the competency to lead this group? We have to wait and see. He's had this injured lineup, guys in and out. We don't know what Stu Lash is as a coach yet. But now, assuming everyone's healthy and assuming everyone is at the level that we think they are, which I think they are, we'll have a chance to see if Stu Lash is at the level as a head coach here. And with the talent they have and the balance on the floor and the amount of go-to guys, this is a team that, if everything goes well and they stay healthy, touch wood, they could maybe go on a little run and sneak into that sixth seed. They're a team that I'm looking at real closely.
So if everything goes well and they stay healthy and everyone plays well, there could be a chance for the top 6. So are you going to just say something, Olgun? That is like, of course, obviously they're going to be in the mix. By the way,
wrong? Is that wrong?
You're just not saying anything, Olgun. So there's only one loss right now between 6th Tasmania, 9th Illawarra. So based on what you've heard, my feeling would be that bringing so many new pieces together, we know it takes time in the NBL. It would be unlikely. Would you pick Brisbane to finish in the top 6? Let's say something here.
Yes.
Okay, I like it. Yeah.
Out of the teams that are not currently in the top 6, if every team, let's say, okay, if every team was healthy, I think the Brisbane Bullets, on paper, are as talented as any team that's hovering around that 3, 4, 5 mark.
All right, I like it.
And that's if everyone is healthy. So I think the talent is there on paper. We just have to see if they can execute it.
Yeah, no, I like it. And look, I did watch a little bit of overtime yesterday with the boys. And Casey Prather, can I just say that I never met Casey Prather, whatever, but listening to him and the fact he still wants to be around it, he's still talking like a leader. I hope he gets back, because there's one thing that Brisbane has just not had. They have not had a stable organization with, particularly imports that they can build around. He seems like he wants to be there. He seems like he's invested. I hope he gets back, because he just seems like the type of guy that you would want to potentially have around for multiple years and try and build something in Brisbane, because they've been a disaster for a while. So we'll see about that. I wouldn't pick him for the top 6, but hey, that's that's what we like to hear. Olgun just really putting it out there. So my storyline, Olgun, is around the Perth Wildcats. And this team right now, 8-6. They're 4th in offense, 6th in defense. So mixed results against the top teams. They beat Adelaide in that one game. But everything suggests that they're a middle of the pack team. But I like the talent. And David Duke Jr. comes in. And I like the role players that they do have. And they've got a bunch of them, whether it's Henschel, whether it's Pepper. Aquera's had impactful minutes at times through the season. And they've got a couple of guys that could legit be in the MVP final, as a finalist, whether it's JLA or Christian Doolittle. But I do think, I've said it time and time again, and we shouldn't let him off the hook for this. When you lose Bryce Cotton, when you decide to go in another direction and he decided to go, there is added pressure that comes with that. And I don't think finishing just in the Final Four is good enough, particularly when the Adelaide 36ers are there competing for a championship. So I'm asking the question, can the Perth Wildcats get over the hump? John Rillie has coached winning teams before. He's got a lot of talent. I'm watching this team to see whether they can come together, these new pieces, and get into a championship series. I don't think so. I don't think that anything tells us this year that they are that type of team. But that's the storyline I'm watching, because I think that should be the expectation when you move on from Bryce.
I agree that should be the expectation. But as of now, the Wildcats they're just fine. They're fine. And that's okay if you're a team that's not going to be probably among the top 3 or 4 spenders in the league, but I think they will be. And that's not just because of who they went out and recruited. And again, we don't admonish teams for spending money. We want teams to spend money. But this is a team that went and recruited Mason Jones as their Bryce Cotton replacement, and a few weeks in decided, yeah, he's probably not the guy. And they had to pay, from what I'm told, substantial buyout to get him to leave. And then they went and got David Duke Jr., who I don't necessarily think was the guy they needed. So, yeah, there's talent across their roster. I don't think they have enough ball carrying. I don't think there's enough point guard play there. Jaylin Galloway has been impressive. I agree with you. David Aquera has been really, really good. This is a team that I think is just fine, though. Again, I don't see them making a championship series. And again, that is probably under the expectations of what ownership would probably want from this team.
Yeah, I think that they can be top 4, which means that we could be heading for a collision course. Adelaide, Perth, 3-game series. That's what we all want to sign up for. So, look, I hope we get there. I am curious this weekend as we look to wrap up this show, Olgun. So this weekend for Perth, Thursday night, Perth, Melbourne. I still think the best rivalry in the NBL. I cannot wait to watch this game. And Perth pushed Melbourne a week or so ago. So we're looking forward to see where they can get it done. And then we have Perth Adelaide on Sunday, Arvo. So you talk about a perfect way to say, hey, we are a contending team and we are up on that level. We had DJ Vasiljevic on Nothing But Net Aussie Hoops last week, and he said Perth, the size and the length, was really challenging to play against. So no, they don't have a true point guard, but they have got an identity. They're big. They have big, massive lineups. So I am fascinated. I've got to stop waving my arms around. See my cameraman? The camera's moving around. I'm just getting a little bit too excited. So anyway, I'm watching Perth. You're watching Brisbane. Anything else cooking on ESPN.com.au, Olgun, we need to keep an eye out for?
The thing I led my story with yesterday was, will there be more import changes? We've seen a lot already. Will there be more as we sort of reach the official midway point of the season? And I said in the story, the short answer is yes. So stay tuned.
Wow. It's very interesting. Who's moving? Just give us one little tidbit. What team we're talking about? Who's making a cut?
Just patience, Kane. Patience.
All right. You better
give it a couple of days.
You better bring something to the table next week. None of this sitting on the fence. Hey, if this team, everything goes perfectly well, they can win. Yeah, we know that, Olgun. We want takes. That's why, we're going to get you back on the sound off. Anyway, this was the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. FIBA break, but still plenty going on. Like I said, make sure you check out espn.com.au for all the latest news. Watch all the NBL on ESPN this weekend. Nothing But Net Aussie Hoops on Thursday night is going to be a lot of fun as well. Ryan Brock off there. Drop your comments, rate, review, do all that stuff. We appreciate the feedback and getting involved in some of these topics we have discussed today. Olgun, you were outstanding. We'll see you next week, and ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour next Tuesday.